what is it? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Red River Class 2021. I will be your host for this panel, That Wu Brandon, and I'm here accompanied with Coach Thumper. I have Rune here, and then I also have Howdy Mick, and they will introduce themselves with their names. I mean, we can just get right going into it. This panel is going to be a talk about the role of video games in an increasing digital world from the perspective of folks who are super plugged in. To begin with, I'll start easy. Could you please introduce yourself, Coach Thumper?
Sure. So I am Joshua Rosenberg. I am a bachelor's in music with an emphasis in engineering at the University of Oklahoma. I'll be graduating in like 2 months, and I'm the Overwatch coach. So that's would be my title of choice.
And also, Rune, if you'd like to introduce yourself and also tell us what kind of game you've been loving recently.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Rune. I'm the esports director for LG. I'm a communication and leadership major as well as I have a minor in entrepreneurship. Um, I kind of these days I've been like really playing Valorant. Like who doesn't love Valorant?
Oh, yeah. No, it's been great recently. I mean, Valorant, the VCT's been awesome. It's been a good time.
Yeah.
Thinks that we have the last chance qualifier kind of get postponed right now. But also, howdy, Mick. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi. Oh, hi. I'm Michaela. I'm the news leader for Senior Esports. And a game I've been loving, we were talking about this in our little group we were doing, and they were like, oh, you can download the Apple Arcade and get like 3 months free. So I've been playing Oregon Trail, and it's been really super fun and super nostalgic. So
Oh, Oregon Trail is a very difficult game. If people don't know that, Oregon Trail, you just die most of the time, like as in Oregon Trail in real life. So it's a fun time to try and get through it and survive. But what are some of your earliest memories of gaming? I mean, anyone can really jump in on this one if anyone's got one first.
I guess for
Sh-
me, oh, sorry, you want
Go
to go
go
first?
ahead,
Okay,
ladies
all right.
first.
For me first, I guess like my earliest memory of gaming was like at the age of 3. My dad sat me in front of a computer and we played World of Warcraft together, and that was just kind of how I started my video game journey, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember anything quite as early as 3, unfortunately. I know I played games for this. So the ones that I can remember was when I got a PS1 when I was like 7 or 8 or something like that. And I started playing Crash Bandicoot, Ratchet and Clank, the first one, and Jack and Daxter, the first one, were those 3 games that have like, and they were all like kind of similar in the fact they all had like rodents for main characters, or like what seemed to be rodents for main
Yeah.
characters, but they were all like really cool. Um, and I just remember, I remember that like I was, I was the only child, and I was also a little bit of a sick child. Like I was in and out of hospitals and stuff. So I remember like even if I was like dog sick at the time, I was like, I could sit down and do this. And it's like, so I remember that was a lot of fun to just be able to do something.
that's actually really interesting. I didn't know that about you. I was also in and out of hospitals growing up. And then my very first memory, Christmas morning, me and my little sister got like rose gold before rose gold was cool, like little Game Boys. And then like we got all the cool games. We got like Barbie Fashionista. We got the puppy game, like all those sort of games. But being in and out of hospitals, it was something that we could do together. So we played those a ton.
Yeah, and I would have to say that one of my early, I mean, you said the dog game Nintendogs. I mean, that was a great time on it. My family is a huge Nintendo family growing up. So I have an older brother, younger brother, and we would all, that was our way to connect was through Nintendo games. But the PS2 for single player stories was like a huge part into it. And my MMO was actually RuneScape. I was a RuneScape player growing up. My computer couldn't run any of the World of Warcraft modes or anything at the time. So RuneScape was where I would spend hours of when we get back off of school, jumped off the bus, would go and then just load it up and play some of those games coming through. But I was also a controller player this whole time. I just recently started getting into keyboard and mouse and going onto PC once I started getting into college. And at the beginning of my high school times, I played a bit. Now, what was some of your first experiences with esports, and how did that bring you to where you are now? And we'll start with Howdy Mick. And also, this is the origins of a gamer panel. If you're just checking in with us, that's why we're going through some of these nostalgic rides and just kind of going back and just remembering the old heydays of the games.
Yeah, some of my very first experiences with esports was with this club. I didn't much like gaming was something for me that was just like I did for fun by myself. And then I met my now husband. He was like, I don't care if you play mobile games on your phone, you play Bejeweled, you can call yourself a gamer. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. So when I got to OU, there was the OU Esports Club, and I was like, well, that's gaming adjacent. Maybe that'll be fun. And then I went to the first meeting, and they were like, this is all the cool stuff we do. And I was kind of sold from there. And I got kind of thrown into this world and learning about the different games you play and how you play them and why you're good or why the strategy is important has been a wild ride the last few years.
Definitely. Also, with Rune, would you like to jump in next?
Sure, sure. For me, actually, I mean, I got my start like I was actually a player for like a long time, but I got my start really like doing esports stuff when I got to LG. I was actually the CS:GO a CS:GO player for one of our teams, and eventually became captain, and then later down the line I as well became like a semi-pro player. So basically, I've had a lot of experience as a player, How did that factor into like my role as an esports director? I guess is kind of how I'll go from here. Basically, as an esports director, a lot of my job is like making sure like players' needs are met and that like they all feel like they're being like, I guess, fairly treated and that they're having like their needs like responded to by staff and stuff like that. So I guess like my job is more or less like making sure that people um, feel like they're being like supported and advocated for. And so basically anything that they need is kind of my job. And so since I'm a person who used to be a player, it kind of just factors in from there. And so I just know what people want and what people need for video game player stuff. So yeah.
Oh, it's a huge role. I mean, there's a lot of extra things that people don't see behind the camera or behind the games of them playing, that there's an extra lot more mental health checks and everything else with these players that go through these high stress games. Coach Thumper.
So I'll try to keep this short, but so I started with esports really young. I think I was like 12 when I started playing. Not even sorry, not started playing when I started playing Call of Duty for money, and I started doing things like, and I started actually like earning a little bit and playing like wager matches, which is essentially like putting a pot in the middle, and then whoever wins the game gets the whole pot, stuff like that. Um, and I played wager matches and other like less organized stuff for quite a few years, just because there wasn't anything as organized. Like now we have like Call of Duty League and Overwatch League, and you have like all of these like CS:GO and Valorant events and everything. Back then it was just like these two websites, right? And they were just like, hey, we'll make sure that everything's on the up and up, but you can wager some money, or you can just like play some free matches that will have like a playoff that's worth like $10 or something. And, it's like a 2 months or like $10. So like it was nothing nearly as official. But I did that for years, and like the more official it got, the more I kept playing like the upper echelon. And then I was a pro player for a while. I went to LANs probably every other month, and I played tournaments every single weekend, and we won quite a few of them. And we kept doing stuff like that. And then I retired from Call of Duty. Call of Duty players not gonna like this, but I retired from Call of Duty because of the community and the overall I don't know, vibe, I suppose, of how people treated each other, stuff like that. I just wasn't about it anymore. I couldn't handle it on like a daily basis. And so I went from game to game after that for a while, and I played Rainbow Six, and I played a few tournaments there and won a few, and couldn't stand the one-shot headshots, so I switched off that too. And I went to Overwatch with like the intent of coaching, because I had experience throughout all of that like playtime, like professional as a player. I did think like as a player, like some tournaments you don't participate in and some things like that, just time wise. So I did do some coaching, and I did do some casting, and I did some other parts of esports during that time too. And I loved coaching a lot, and I tutored other subjects, and I continue to tutor other subjects, and I have like over 40 credit hours worth of education classes completed at the university. So I'm a teacher. I like teaching, and so I went to Overwatch specifically with the intent of teaching. And I've been doing that for a little over 3 or 4 years now, and I think it's the best time I've had in esports, honestly. So.
Well, thank you for the wide variety of games and everything. I mean, like that's the people don't see, is that people think you just play one game and it sticks the whole entire time. But there's people that definitely transition and jump around
Yeah,
to different
I've played 4 games up to almost either professional or almost professional level.
Well, hats off to you, because I mean it's crazy tough, because my beginning of esports, which I really didn't even think esports were a thing, like as going into it and playing, was I played Gears of War a lot. And I played it so much that I was climbing like solo queue rankings and kind of going all the way to where I was competing just under the amateur, like pro am area, to where I'd be in the games with the pros, like Explosive and Summons and all these other people that would play on like Optic when they won a bunch of championships. So like I was really hyped about that game. It was fun. Like the passion in the game was one thing. It is one of those communities that is a lot more a little bit more abrasive after a win in that game mode, to where I played it a bunch, but then I didn't really know that there was much going on after that. So I kind of stopped, and I got my education at my undergrad at my old school. And but I still played games and still tried to play into it and kind of go that way. Then to when I came here for my master's in communication here, that's when the OU esports, same thing with Michaela. I jumped into the meeting and I was like, you know what? Let me try and put my head down and do everything that I can in here. because it's been such a great time just going involved and jumping in from the news and media side to the production side to casting some of the games that I enjoy and I'd love to play growing up. So, I mean, esports kind of just took me to a whole nother level of like seeing like, hey, this is a thing, this is a future. I'm excited to put my whole heart into it and just keep going. Now, how would your life be affected if you couldn't game for an extended period of time? Like, would you be able to connect with some friends, relax from a stressful work day? And how is it more than a game for y'all? I mean, we can jump over here with Rune first if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. I guess for me personally, like a lot of my okay, so here's the thing with me. I will play a game, right? And then I will put my all of my time into it. So that's kind of how I work. But otherwise, like other than having that grindy mindset sort of, I have like other games that I download just to play with friends. So for me, gaming is like an avenue to connecting with friends of mine and like actually having a social life to some degree. At least especially during the pandemic, I would say that that's especially true during the pandemic. Um but yeah, I kind of find gaming to be a way for me to one relax, two compete, and then three like hang out with friends. So that's kind of how I see gaming personally for me. So yeah.
So, Michaela?
Gotta unmute myself. Oh my goodness. That is a really great question. So I think of all the ways that I integrate gaming into my life. First of all, I was a transfer student to the University of Oklahoma. So I didn't have a lot of like best buddies when I first got here. Like I moved into my apartment, my family drove away, and I was like, I do not know anyone here. So I've got to do something to like make some friends and make it work. So I started looking into that esports kind of part. I was like, well, this is something I'm already passionate about, and I have met a lot of great friends, and I love hanging out with our news and media team every week. But more than that, a game is always more than a game because I, as a kid, like kind of struggled a lot with like confidence and kind of social anxiety. So kind of solving those challenges and then making friends and having meaningful social interactions in those games kind of warmed me up per se, that it would be easier to do that in person in real life with the confidence aspect of it. And then that just like at the end of a long day, like of course I want to feel accomplished, that like maybe stuff didn't go well during work or during school or whatever, but I know that I can like come home, hang out with my partner, and like our farm on Stardew Valley, top tier, just gorgeous. And I know that it's silly, but you know, you can take a lot of pride in something that you have put real time into and have real feelings about, even if it's digital.
My turn.
Yeah.
So my answer might be a little bit different from y'all's just because like I am a coach, which I mean like I have I have to be on and doing taking gaming really seriously for at least 2-3 hours a day, depending if we have practice or a vaudeville or anything like that. So the part of the question that is like how would your life be affected if you couldn't game for extended? It's like I have gamed over 2 hours almost every day of my life for the last it's 18 years. Like, how do I answer this question? Like I was like, I have no idea. Because even when I'm not doing like video games, like when I'm not sitting down and I'm like, even when I'm not doing that, I play chess, as a game, it's a game. I go play Dungeons and Dragons with friends, and that's how I connect with some people that, don't necessarily or don't want to play esports, right? Or don't game or something like that. It's like pretty much every medium of interaction I have with friends or anyone else is going to be through the medium of either gaming or food, And so it's like it's a difficult question because like I just don't know. Like I don't know if I don't know. I don't know that my life has ever been not having a decent amount of gaming in it. So I really am not sure what what that would look like. And I don't think I'd be able to connect with friends. As far as like relax after a stressful work day, this is my work. This is what I do. I go to class and everything, but realistically, like coaching is my job. And I use other games. I use Madden and Valorant and some other games to kind of de-stress and like not think about it for a while. But yeah, I mean the gaming and gaming is kind of like it's de-stress, it's my job, it's the way to connect, it's the way to like explain things, you know. It's just it's a hard question to answer because it's like do do I have any experience with it not being there that I could like compare anything? I mean, not really. So
Hey, I mean, it takes just as you said, like once it becomes like your job and everything goes that way, and this is our way to de-stress. Like other people have, like the gym where they go to the gym every single day and they got to do it, and they just keep working out and going that. It's just the same thing as any other way, but this for us is is just a little bit more. In the sense that
yeah.
it can bring a lot more things out than just like, oh, like looking a little better. It builds these communities, and it starts striving to different things in the future for people to start kind of noticing. Because I mean, recently with all the big media push that we've been getting due to, I guess, during COVID when everyone had to go inside and play video games, it kind of pushed us out into the forefront a lot more to where more people are starting to notice, even though we know that there's already been a lot of big investors from a lot of different companies into these esports and gaming going on that way.
Yeah,
Now,
and the just to expand off
yeah,
that a little bit, like the when you're in the discipline, like when you're in the fields, right? Like we understand, like you know, we understand that Overwatch League just coming to my title, right? 100,000 viewers every time you turn on a channel. You know, they got the Coca-Cola, you know, T-Mobile, all these other things. CDL, same thing. You know, we don't even, and I'm not even in the scene, but I at least understand, like, hey, CS:GO tournaments in Europe and you know in Japan and everything, like huge massive events that hundreds thousands of people turn up to, you know, and that's not even including like the conventions that like the video game conventions, PAX, E3, all these other stuff, right? Once you have any relative recent information into our field, it's like very clear, okay, this is a multi-million dollar field. Like this is absolutely an entire industry that is growing and is already very large to say that it's like growing, right? But a lot of people just see it as sitting down behind a screen, you know, and clicking buttons, and it's like, and they can't even recognize like the skill behind clicking buttons. It's like, well, all you do is throw a ball into a hoop. Like that's such an oversimplification. Yet they get so fit into that. Yet they don't expect the same thing back the other way. And I think that that's why panels like this are important, and like events and continuing to talk about it like this is important, is because like, hey, you don't have all the information, so let's like make sure you have all the information and continue to throw that information out there to make sure that they don't just say, hey, you're just clicking buttons, or say, you know, you're just playing a game. It's like, what is basketball, what's football? And I love basketball and football, I played, but like, what is that? It's the same thing, you know. So like I yeah, I agree with that completely.
and I mean, as you said, the scenes like CS:GO has been going on pretty much like most of our lives, correct? Right, Ren? Do you have
Yeah,
anything to say with your
for
long guns?
about for about like 13, 14 years at this point at least, maybe like, and that's only for like Go, so that's like the newest one, and before that there was, yeah, it's been around for like a long time.
Yeah, and then when Valorant was coming out, the big new game that if you're just joining Valorant's a new tactical FPS that came out, and it was supposed to be the killer of CS:GO and to move on because it's the same thing with different like hero abilities in Overwatch and adding that to the tactical first-person shooter. But I mean, CS:GO is still thriving and still has a tons of people watching going on, and then Valorant still it's startup its first year into the whole entire scene, and it still has such a huge push because it has a big foundation with Riot Games, at least also able to kind of support them and have different tournament scenes that help a lot different compared to new games that kind of come into the talks of it. But if with kind of like thinking of the future and just like kind of have it going around, do you see like esports kind of taking the toll, like kind of going farther in any aspect? Do you guys think of the future of esports kind of evolving? Like, do you guys predict of anything that might kind of come in the future?
It's impossible to predict accurately, but I see in the future things like I'll say this and then they'll be like the total opposite and the internet breaks and none of us can access it tomorrow or something. But I see it becoming more mainstream because kids are growing up even more so now. as young as like 2 and 3 years old, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, as digital natives. So as they're on these platforms, like we're gonna see those first few people who played basketball compared to like Kobe. I don't watch a lot of basketball, but like the first guy who played basketball was nothing compared to Kobe. So if you think about like those of us who got Game Boys at like 10 and kind of, or like things like on the computer, like of course we don't have the same skill as like whatever they're gonna do in 20 years or 30 years, whatever games. And I can't wait to see like how these kids totally revolutionize this industry and kind of bag those big names, and it becomes more of a thing. Like of course I play esports, like just like everybody knows how to play dodgeball, everybody knows how to play Valorant or whatever. So I hope that's what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I can tend to agree, and actually, you can already see it, because I was a pro player, and I retired from playing professionally about 6 years ago, and the players now, I would get destroyed. I wouldn't even keep up at all. It's been like 5 years, like it's not even close. Like the tools we have, like the aim trainers that they've developed, and in Overwatch specifically, like there's technique trainers in the game that people have like made in custom lobbies and stuff, and there's just so many, like there's so much information, there's so much understanding of the games that's developed, even in the title, even in Call of Duty, the title that I used to play, and stuff like that. It's like the games are constantly developing, and like it's like, I guarantee you, I could go into any semi-pro lobby now and like I don't play Call of Duty anymore, but I could practice for like 3 months, go into any Call of Duty lobby, right? Like semi-pro right now, I'd be the worst player in there. I'd be absolutely terrible compared to those guys. And like that's no knock on me, but it's just like players get better. Like you said, like the players in the 20s that and the 30s that played NBA or ABA or anything like that, like they didn't have a 3-point line. That like they had
Yeah.
they didn't have half the fouls we have. They have nothing. They're just like around the court, like, all right, like layups are better than jump shots and so on and so forth. And now we got Steph Curry dropping 45 last night with 25 3-pointers, whatever. So it's like, 25 points rather, in the first quarter. So it's like the games change and people get better and they understand more efficient ways to play and everything. So I completely agree with that.
I would also say that, like, honestly, as time goes on, we might see. I don't know. Really depends on like, I guess Western attitudes towards gaming in general and how those will change over time. And again, I can't predict because again, this is just a very unpredictable field, right? But like as we see things happen, maybe we'll get to the point where like in Korea, right, where they build 4 to 5 stadiums for esports itself, and like being an esports athlete is seen as like a celebrity sort of status. So like I mean, it's possible that we go in that direction. It's happened in like Eastern countries, that's a thing, right? Like they're seen as like actual celebrities, and there's like the prestige and the status that comes with that, right? And I mean, yes, you make as much money in Europe or in North America as they do, probably, yeah. But I think the way that it's received, it's different, which I think is going to be a big part in how this thing shapes up, is how like attitudes are changed over time towards this sort of stuff. And I think, of course, like as new players come up and we start seeing people actually be like really, really like strong in their sports and stuff, or in their esports and stuff like that, I think that there will definitely start being more and more acceptance. And as more like companies start investing in that stuff and at least showing that it's legitimate, then yeah, I think we'll definitely see more of a turn towards
Yeah,
that
I
sort of
mean, as you said, Eastern culture has already kind of accepted into it because mobile gaming is huge over there to where they have like millions of dollar championships over the, if you're on YouTube, like Raid Shadow Legends and everything else that kind of goes, like all these mobile games have the huge support and acceptance into the cultures on the Eastern side, at least. It's just still making its way over here because I work at the bookstore here on campus at OU, and I have people come in and I tell them, oh yeah, like I do esports, I do news and media and production and all this. And they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? I was like, dude, I was like, yeah, it's huge. Like, we have this. And then to get them kind of on board or like kind of thinking about it, I'm like, I mean, Post Malone owns a COD team. He owns part of Complexity. Complexity gaming team is pretty much the Dallas Cowboys. It has Jerry Jones behind it, has everything else. They just signed a huge streamer, Tim the Tat Man, onto their whole entire team. So there's like different things that people don't understand. Like Kevin Durant owns a Call of Duty team for the New York Subliners. Like there's different people that are investing into it. Like one of the big backers for 100 Thieves is Drake. Drake's in there and Scooter Braun and a bunch of other people, to where you don't see that every day. You don't read the headline like blank has joined into it. You see that on more of the news and media side of esports, like the Stero and On Point and other people, other things like that. But I have young kids also that come in like thinking of going to OU. I tell them, hey, like if you're into, do you play video games? Do you enjoy it? Like, do you like doing it? Yeah, I play some games. Like, hey, well, we have a team. If if you're really into that. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not really competitive. I'm like, okay, well, hey, we have news and media. We got some production. We got casting. We have everything else streaming. If you'd like to do that, like, oh yeah, like that'd be cool. Like I start getting them thinking, turning their heads to these things in the future, so that they know that there's still a path. Like that's what it is, just getting that awareness out. But what would you guys say to someone kind of going into esports or trying to get into esports, into any of this?
So I have to have this conversation almost daily. Because so there's three things that I do that I have to have this conversation for. The first one is I'm the primary recruiter for the Overwatch program at OU as well. So I've talked to high school students. Uh, I've talked to high school students from about 25 different states. I've talked to people from Germany, England, Sweden, Switzerland, Russia, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and Brazil, I think, and I'm missing one, I think, but I've talked to people from like everywhere, and I really have to sit them down and talk to them, because there's two really bad misconceptions with that level of people that are like, I want to go to college with the intent of competing in mind. Like these people are already like, I want to compete, like they're already kind of in esports, but then now they need to kind of take the next step. And the two things I have to constantly say is like, we are student gamers, not gamer students. So you're a student first. Just like the whole student athlete adage is like, you're a student first. If you come to the university, you are a student first. And maybe there's some universities and colleges that won't do that, like that are okay with you, not going to class for 2 weeks straight because you have a playoff match or something. We're not one of them. So the I say that to say, like, this group of people I constantly have that are already kind of in esports, but they're trying to take it to the next level. I say that because I want to make sure, A, it's true, but B, I want to make sure that anyone going to esports doesn't give up the rest of their life completely. It can't just be you wake up, sit down in front of a computer for 12 hours, go and eat like, Doritos and nothing else for that entire 12. Like that's a stereotype we're trying to get rid of. Like that's the stereotype that like that's what people think we do. That's not what 99.9999% of us do. Okay. And the whole idea that's what we do needs to be getting rid of. And so that's why I said that. And if you're not someone, and then the second and third thing I do is we run summer camps at OU for K through 12. And I coach independently. So because of that, because of those things, we need to make sure I need to constantly talk to them about kind of the same thing, which is like, hey, your grades are important, your family's important, your friends are important, health is important, eat well, don't like down energy drinks like like it's water, so on and so forth. Like I need to have conversations like those constantly with people, because we are fighting stigmas. And also, it's really tempting to just say we're just gonna sit in front of a computer and play games because that's what we want to do, and kind of ignore the world. And it's like, but you can't do that. You're still part of the world, whether it's this world or whether it's the world out there. Like you're still part of the whole thing, and we need to keep that in mind. And so when I tell people they're getting like asked, they want to get involved more deeply with esports, I often try to ask about motivations, because if your motivation is escape, or your motivation is addictive or something like that, maybe not the best route for you right now. But if your motivation is more like, well, I have friends, or I want to be competitive, or anything that's maybe a little bit more constructive. It can teach you discipline, it can teach you time management, it can teach you a lot of really good things. But if you come into it with an addictive personality or an addictive mindset, or you come into it with a really toxic personality or something like that, or like with the expectation that you're already just going to be the best right out the gate or something like that, I usually those people are the ones that I try to steer away and say, okay, maybe we add a little bit more practice time, maybe some time constraints, maybe make a practice schedule, something like that. But maybe you don't jump right in, because it might not be the best for you right now.
On the Longhorn Gaming side, what do you tell people trying to get into esports and everything?
I think it depends on what exactly we mean by getting into esports. I think if you're trying to be like a player, then yeah, I 100% agree with Thumper that like telling them that hey, you need to it's something outside of just constantly playing and constantly like because again like they are like if we're looking at the collegiate level, then yes, you are a student first. There needs to be boundaries, right? Like there needs to be some sort of constraint. But if we're talking like someone who maybe is more like Michaela, right? Who is more on the news and media side or is more on something else but still wants to consider esports as like maybe a future occupation or something like that, right? I think there's also a lot more talk that needs to go into that aspect of there are other things other than players in esports too, right? Like there are definitely other sides of it. And I think right, like there's like a huge like I don't know, I thought I was like on Twitter the other day, there was like a huge tree of different like things you can do, whether it be casting, whether it be like because right at the end of the day, this is still like a company thing as well. Orgs are all companies. They all need people to help run them, right? So at the same time, I think if you're trying to go into esports and if you're not on that like player side, and that just means honestly trying to get better and practicing and putting in the time with VOD reviews and whatnot, I think otherwise it's more of like a conversation of, hey, have you networked? Have you talked to people? Have you been I don't know, like if you want to be an editor, have you been making like a sort of portfolio of things that you've done or things like that? Or have you I think for me as a person who wants to go into esports in the future, and I'm not really looking to go into player side if it's possible. If it is cool, if not, whatever. Um, for me personally, I've been talking to a lot of people. I've been like looking at literally any opportunity that comes up and being like, hey, I want to get my name out there. I want to just try to make myself known because it's an industry. It's honestly an industry that takes a lot of. Um, it's very much internal shush shut or like sort of situation where it just like people will keep sort of job postings or things like that to themselves. And so a big part of it is making sure you get your name out there and like branding yourself properly.
No, I feel that completely because I mean, my friends back home, they're like, "Why do you always reply to all these people on Twitter? Why do you always do this? Like, they're not going to answer you. They're not going to do this." I said, "No, it's to get my name out there. It's to start like noticing these people that go down the threads and read it. Because as much as you might not think like maybe the big streamer doesn't see it, but a production director or a content VP reads underneath or sees this and then goes on to my profile and then sees this and kind of goes that route down on the way looking is exactly what this kind of industry has to go into is that there's more of a media side to it and more of like kind of knowing these different people that are going that way. As you say, some of the things are a little bit like hush about it down underneath so that you got to go search for it. You got to go put your name out and make yourself for it.
Yeah.
And I would say that's true on the player side and on the thing side because from an advertiser perspective, this is my PR major talking. We like as kids who are pretty much in their 25 to 30 range, we don't want to be advertised to at all. So those things that are really subtle, like podcasts and sponsorships, are a growing industry, right? So people are putting money into those type of things. But if you as a player or if you as a PR manager or as a production person aren't like in an organization that you want to support or have a personal brand that they want to support, like you're going to be missing out on those ability to like boost your platform and have those partnerships. And I know we all love to make fun of influencers, but esports players and esports arena folks are influencers and we influence the community around us. So if we think about it, instead of influencing so I can make money, it's influencing so I can make positive impact on my community. It's influencing so I can show them, products and other lifestyle brands that are important to them and kind of creating an experience where you're nurturing your personal brand and your personal audience. That's what I would say is important as a esports player or somebody on the other side, just because I don't watch a ton of these things, but I know everybody in our organization like Thumper who does really amazing community stuff.
Thank you.
He said,
Yeah, I was actually going to say that is a lot of people. I feel like and I know this is like American community, like American as a whole, not necessarily just esports, but I feel like we judge everything on how much money you make. Like the huge, like I don't know if it's taboo to talk about the huge leak of like Twitch and like how much everyone's a streamer
Yeah.
makes and blah blah blah. Like everyone was talking about like how much streamers make and everything, and not talking about like okay, but like how like there's a streamer at Overwatch. He's a professional player named Super, which this guy like runs a almost completely like as much as you can on a multiplayer game, a completely like friendly family friendly like he's a good guy. He interacts with his stream as much as possible. He's trying to like help people, you know, and there are coaches and other people in Overwatch that are like doing the right things. And I'm not going to name names, but there are also players that really aren't. They're going for like shock factor, and they're going for they like throw games on purpose to play a certain way because they think it's funny or like blah blah blah, right? And so like I think we really should um be viewing things a lot more on the lines of, you know, what is the impact on the community, what are you doing for to progress this industry and things like that, other than just making personal money. And a lot of times we view it as like success is how much money you're making. Like this streamer's making 12 million, this streamer's making half a million, blah blah blah. It's like, oh my gosh, like you're rich, oh you've made it. It's like, yeah, but we're trying to figure out a way to constantly make sure that in an industry where people only survive an average of like 2 to 3 years, how you can survive for 20, 30 years. You know, and how do you do that if like if your entire thing is, you know, I'm gonna sit here and, you know, make a little bit of a fool of myself, or try to make everyone else feel like a fool of themselves. That's you know, bullying, you know, looking at like that human interaction to try to look at a car crash only lasts for a certain amount of time. And eventually, you know, we've got to grow up, but unfortunately for you know, fortunately, esports and video games is not something where a lot of people think, oh, you got to grow up, that means stop. No, it doesn't mean stop. That's the people that don't understand the industry. It means grow up. It means you got to start being a positive light in your community, in your title. It means you got to start, you know, helping other people build their platforms. You know, you got to be that person that other people come to with like, hey, I want to get my name out there. What are some jobs available? And you can start directing people, things like that. You know, like yeah, I wasn't gonna name names. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. But you know, so like you got to do more than that. It's more than, oh, I make X amount of money. That's not the point. You know, and if it is the point, you're probably not in the right industry right now. You know, maybe you do sign on to Twitch and get 5,000 viewers concurrently every single time and make 12 million or whatever. Probably not. There's probably like 10 of those. You know, and I think it's a lot more likely that you, if you're a positive light in community and you can find, you know, you can find really great directors, you know, like Rune, and you can find, you know, Mike and other people that really have a foothold in this industry and can find positions and jobs and other things for you, or even if they can just be that letter of recommendation for your next academic career, be that sign off, you know, that phone call for your next job interview, something like that even. I just think we spend way too much time talking about like the shock factor of being immature or whatever, or like toxic community and blah blah. It's just too much.
And that's what we like push, like each of us, I know, like at least part of like OU esports, that's one of our big culture shifts, is that we want to change that about these toxic communities, or that we're unproductive and just sitting here playing games. Like there's a lot more things that we like take a step farther just to make sure that we can start counteracting it. Because yeah, I mean, like we all had our moments growing up, like screaming in front of the TV or doing things like that. But like as you said, we got to grow up. We got to understand that like you got to kind of get away from that, because that's not the way that like you talk to these people, because there's someone else on the other side of that mic, there's someone else on the side of that screen that kind of goes that way. But I mean, like on that side of it, we just want to push away from it. Like, yeah, you might get frustrated again, but then take a step back, get up. You can walk away from the game. Like, it's not just like it's not a part of you. So you can just stand up and kind of like walk away from it, and just take some time, some breather, get some water, try something else, jump onto another game, as you said, where you take Dumper. You say you go into Madden and other games, like go on to other like single player games. You know, hey, jump on some Bejeweled, jump on some Sims. You know, change up the games that you play, and don't make it always so stressful about it. And then when you're having a bad time, don't look at it as bad, kind of look at it to where you can grow from that and be a better player on like what mistakes there were. Don't really blame it on others. Start kind of pointing it around and saying like, okay, what can I do to kind of counteract all some of this stuff? And what would what would you guys say to someone who it kind of sees all this toxicity and is like, ah, like kind of just brushes it off? Like, is there something that you guys would want to tell them before they brush it off, uh, to like take the time to watch it, or anything else? Like, what would you guys say to someone outside looking in and just seeing only that side of it?
My dad loves, loves, loves to pick on me and my brother for playing video games. And of course he's just playing with us and he's not being like mean and like hateful, like you shouldn't play video games, but he just sees it as this thing that's like, oh, you're wasting time until it's time to go to work or whatever. And so we've had this conversation now that I've been kind of senior esports, like, Dad, I know that it sounds dorky and it's not something you're into, and you played Atari and then now you feel like you've grown up so you don't play Atari or whatever. But this is something entirely different and it's a community. And yeah, there are those toxic people, but there's also people kind of like we've discussed here that are actively trying to combat that. Especially I feel like it's sooner esports. Like I was really nervous to join because I was like, well, if I get picked on and they're mean to me, like I'll just bounce out. Like I don't have to deal with people who are mean. And then I experienced something so totally radically different than kind of what that expectation was kind of the warmth and the welcome wagon. And then I see that kind of through my husband's gaming clan, like they're so nice, they want to play, they want to be like, oh, we're so glad you're here, we're so glad you and Josiah are happy. Like when we got married, they sent us nice wedding gifts. Like it was just really nice, this nice thing that I wasn't expecting at all. So it's not just a waste of time or people who are mean, it's people who are actively building a community that transcends race, transcends gender, transcends like national borders, which is just really exciting to me.
Any last minute things to leave off on, Ruin or Thumper? Just the same way talking about these bad stereotypes of toxic communities on gaming.
As a person who's dealt with a lot of toxicity because I play in games like CS:GO and Valorant where there's just a lot of toxicity in those communities. Um, I would say that yeah, definitely. I would definitely agree that like if you can find people who aren't like that and like you play with them and like you just have a good time with them and it can make all the difference. If you can find the people who are like are positive influence in those sort of hateful negative times. Like for me personally, I was on a team with all like 5 women. That was one of the best experiences that I've had in my life. Like it was incredibly great. Like it was I've competed with them and it was just a really good time because we were just here for each other and we uplifted each other and we didn't let anyone like talk bad about us and it was just there for each other. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I don't want to get up on a soapbox too hard
No.
because this is like one of my subjects. But I don't want to get up on a soapbox too hard. I don't want to speak to this too heavily because there are you know, Rune was just speaking to the whole gender thing in esports, which can be such a problem. It is unfortunately, it is true that especially on the for some reason, especially on the first person shooter games when you're online, all of them, by the way, not just CS:GO, Valorant, but Call of Duty, Overwatch, all of those first person shooters. You hear some, and not just sexist, but especially sexist. You hear some things that if that was said in public, and I am not a violent person, I would punch them in the face. Like it is real bad. And the only thing I would say to that is speaking to in the community, not necessarily people outside of the community, but people actually in the community. Be the be the change you want to see. Don't be silent. You know, if you at the very least, there's report systems in every multiplayer game now. At the very least, like you need to know as a player and as part of this community that that is not acceptable, and that those things are not something, you know, don't let them hide behind a screen. You know, like one of the like I'm sorry, I'm a history minor, but like one of the worst things you can do in history is forget about it, ignore it, or be silent during it. That's the worst thing you can do. And like we're consistently doing that as an overall community. Maybe not OU Esports, not Longhorn Gaming, you know, not these entities that have their name out there and aren't afraid to stick their neck out. But I'm talking about the average gamer in, you know, a silver Valorant lobby, you know, a diamond Overwatch lobby. I'm talking about those people. Don't be silent. You know, maybe you can't speak up, maybe you're non-confrontational. That's fine. There's a report system. You can mute them. You know, you can get rid of them. You can mute them and tell that person they were picking on, hey, don't worry about that. Let's just play this game. You're doing great. Moving on. Like you can make that choice to not be the problem and actually be a part of the solution as well. And giving into that and just saying, that's the way it is. That's as bad as doing it yourself. I mean, sincerely, that is as bad. And you need to be the difference. You need to see the difference. Like you need to be that difference. Don't just be like, man, I really wish this is different. Well, then start being part of the difference. make that difference yourself. Because if everyone's have that attitude, nothing's changing. And you got to do something about that. And so, like, as far as toxicity in esports and toxicity in gaming in general, and specifically speaking towards gender and everything else, like, just do something. Like, be part of the solution. Don't be silent. Don't be neutral, because neutral is negative.
Yep. I mean, you said it. You said it great. Perfect way to put it for everything on that side. And we could go on for days talking about what needs to change and what we're actively doing to kind of combat that, as you're saying, and as a community to step up and not to stand down when things happen that way. I mean, we could keep going because I know all of us got some stories and to go like that. But this is the Red River Class 2021, so we're actually going to get into our next title. What's the first title of the day will be Rocket League over on the Longhorn Gaming Longhorn Gaming Twitch channel. They'll be in the chat below. Everyone will switch over. We'll be hosting it onto that side. So go on to watch some good Rocket League and have just a fun time watching it, because last year's Rocket League match was overtime, just a banger goal after banger goal. So it should be a great time watching. This is That Woo Brandon. I'm here with Thumper, Ruin, and Howdy Mick, and we will see y'all over at the Rocket League match.